Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the January 10th, 2017 Board of Supervisors meeting. Welcome to our newest colleagues, Supervisor Sandra Lee Fewer, Supervisor Asha Safai, Supervisor Jeff Sheehy, and Supervisor Hillary Ronan. Welcome to the board. Well, this is not your first meeting, it's your second, but welcome. And to the returning members. With that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam President. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell present. Supervisor Fewer.
Present.
Fewer present. Supervisor Kim. Not present. Supervisor Peskin.
Present.
Peskin present. Supervisor Ronan.
Present.
Ronan present. Supervisor Safai.
Present.
Safai present. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Yee. Yee present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
I have no communications to report, Madam President.
Colleagues, are there any changes to the November 15, 2016 board meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Supervisor Farrell, seconded by Supervisor Tang. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, those board meeting minutes will pass after public comment. And Madam Clerk, please note that Supervisor Kim was in the room during that vote.
Thank you, Madam President.
All right. Please call the next item.
Item 1 is an ordinance to appropriate a total of $9 million of real property transfer tax in fiscal year 2016 through 17 for funding community college, to support students attending the city college, and to place funds on Controller's Reserve pending the outcome of general fund tax revenue measures in the November 8th, 2016 election.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Breed. I would normally not make a speech again during the second and final vote for an item, but being that the House has significantly changed, I thought for especially our new colleagues that I would talk a little bit about the thinking behind the supplemental that is before us today, and a little bit about the history. As I had talked about a month ago, in the 20th century, our government made a very expensive choice. And they made a decision that public education, K through 12, was fundamental to our citizenry and a workable nation, and that this education should be free and universal. In the 20th century, in large part due to this choice, America became great. And it used to be, during the 20th century, that a high school diploma was all that was required to give most Americans an opportunity to climb into the middle class. And in the last 30 years, we are now seeing that innovation and technology are racing ahead of our public education system. Research nationally shows that by 2020, 70% of all jobs in this country will require some type of post-secondary degree, training, or certificates. And politicians are taking note. Throughout the country, many states are implementing a variety of programs to make community college free for eligible high school students. And both of our Democratic Party candidates, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, campaign on a platform to make community college free. I believe that as policymakers, it is our role to re-examine the tools and resources that we provide our citizenry that we consider fundamental to giving people a fighting chance to enter into our middle class. I'm going to make the case today, as I did last month ago, that includes access to our community college. I've been asked over and over again why we don't have a proposal that is means tested, and why should we subsidize the education of individuals who can afford it. If I had put forward an ordinance today that was before the Board of Supervisors that stated that K through 12 public education would now be means tested, I would be laughed out of the room. But I ask you, why should we subsidize the education for the children of Facebook, if Facebook founder, if they chose to send their children to public school? Well, we believe that a K through 12 education is a public good, one that all of society benefits from, and that we all gain when children graduate from high school. I'm going to state a much more compelling reason as to why we should make City College free for all. I don't believe a high school diploma is enough to give most Americans the tools and resources that they need just to have an opportunity to succeed in today's society. And the biggest elephant in the policy rooms of cities across this country is our growing income and wealth gap. Cities across the nation have a rapidly growing income gap. 40 years ago, there were more middle-class Americans than there were Americans in the low-income and upper-income brackets. Today, there are now more Americans in our lower and upper-income bracket than in the middle class. The Brookings Institution has found that the income gap between San Francisco's rich and poor is the fastest growing of any city in this country. According to our own Human Services Agency data, the income gap in San Francisco rivals the country of Rwanda and Guatemala. Our own middle class is shrinking here in San Francisco. Between 1990 and 2012, our middle class shrunk from 45% of San Francisco's population down to 34%. Meanwhile, the percentage of those that are earning under $25,000 has grown, while the percentage of people also earning more than $100,000 also grew from 1990. And no one can deny this growing inequity that we are seeing here in San Francisco. We see it on our streets. And we are responsible, I believe, in this board chamber for at least trying to attempt to reverse the trend that we are seeing not just across this country, but here in San Francisco today. And there is no better way of doing it than by investing in human capital and investing in our citizens. And we can do that by investing in their education and their likelihood of succeeding in our region. So let's increase the opportunity of more San Franciscans entering into our middle class. And if you are already in the middle class, let's help you stay there. Higher education shouldn't be a death sentence. It is frankly shameful that student debt is now the largest debt in America, exceeding our credit card debt today. It is shameful that Americans have to spend so much just in order to have a chance to have an opportunity to own their own home or even just rent a home in San Francisco, to raise your family, and have maybe a decent pension one day. I had mentioned last month that San Francisco has a legacy of being bold and progressive. We were one of the first cities to marry gay couples, to establish single-payer universal health care, and the first to raise minimum wage for all of our workers to $15 an hour by 2018. Now, I was one of the authors of our minimum wage ordinance, which passed with 77.5% of the vote in 2014. But we know that the fight for 15 isn't about lifting more people into the middle class. It is about lifting people out of destitution. So that is my case today for why I believe that a K through 14 education system should be universal and free. We should examine and re-examine what we consider a policy to be that will ensure that most of our citizens have a chance to make it here in San Francisco, and of course, an opportunity to increase and grow our middle class. I had also mentioned last month a little bit about the history of our ultra-luxury real estate transfer tax, which I introduced as the Fair Share Package. I believe that we should ask those who have profited the most in our luxury housing market to pay a little bit more to make San Francisco more equitable for all of us. And it makes sense, because if you're fortunate to be amongst a small group of individuals that can own a building valued above $5 million, you must acknowledge that the value of your property isn't just based on your own hard work, but the value the city brings to your building and your home. You should share the profits of your building and homes with the rest of the city. And these buildings are only valuable because they are in San Francisco, a city which we have all made great. That is undeniable. Throughout the time that we decided on how to best spend down these dollars, we worked very closely with the Labor Council, and I see Tim Paulson here in the audience. Thank you so much for your leadership and work on this. And also AFT 2121, whose membership I also see here, the president, Tim Killikelly, and political director, Elisa Messer, who actually came to our office and proposed that we use this ultra-luxury revenue to help expand public education and make community college free for all. Whether you are a public high school graduate, whether you are an adult that may not have gone to college and wants to go back for additional training or to get your associate's degree, if you have an associate's degree from City College here today, you are on average likely to make $11,000 more than with just a high school diploma. This is a stat specifically for San Francisco residents, not across the country. And so we worked together with the Labor Council and AFT 21, along with the entire Board of Trustees of City College and the administration, to bring this ballot measure forward to the voters in November. Now, many people have asked why we did not make it a dedicated special tax, and that is simply because we cannot. By state law, you cannot dedicate real estate transfer tax. Otherwise, we would have put that in as an option. So we are here today to ask this Board of Supervisors to appropriate the dollars that we committed as we campaign to voters in San Francisco to making City College free for all San Francisco residents. And so, colleagues, I want to thank you for your vote a month ago. This measure did pass 9-1 at the full board, and I just want to acknowledge and thank the support of all of my colleagues here last month. And to my new colleagues, I do ask for your support on moving this forward so that in August, San Francisco will become the first city in the nation to make community college free for all of our residents. I do also just want to finally acknowledge Chancellor Susan Lamb, who worked very closely with her administration on helping us craft this together. And I do look forward to work, because beyond the appropriation, I'll be looking forward to working with board members on the actual implementation of how we make this a reality here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Safai.
Thank you. I rise to speak in favor of this what's it called? I'm losing the words for a second. This supplemental request. I just want to add to some of the things that Supervisor Kim talked about, and one in particular. When we talk about having a means test for something like this, people that are often left out the most are the residents of my district, people that are working families. Because oftentimes that fluctuates in terms of the economy, in terms of the cost of living in San Francisco. I know that Governor Cuomo, California, proposed a threshold of $125,000, a family making up to that. In many cases, that's a teacher, that's a nurse and their partner, that's a working family member. And if you go a little bit above that, you're priced out. And in a city like San Francisco, when we're talking about continuing education and continuing access for everybody, this is an important aspect of it. So I firmly believe in the proposal making it free for everyone, and I want to just commend Supervisor Kim and others that have supported this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Safai. Supervisor Fuhrer.
Thank you, Madam President. I also am in favor of Free City College. I myself am a City College graduate. My father having passed away when I was 14 years old, City College was the only option for myself and my sisters. I know how important public education is and to the foundation of our democracy. Just leaving my position as a commissioner of the San Francisco Board of Education, I know it is the dream of the San Francisco Unified School District that every one of our seniors would graduate with City College credits under their belt as they enter a four-year institution. Also, City College, we transition 700 to 800 students every year to City College. These are the students we serve, 90% students of color. The majority of students are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and that is on a federal poverty guideline, so you know they are barely making it here in San Francisco. And then also we have the highest, the most rigorous graduation requirements in the state of California, and we have one of the highest graduation rates. So that's to say that our students are prepared to go to college, and sometimes City College is the only option. And I agree with Supervisor Kim that this is a solution, one of the solutions to our wealth gap. It is one of our solutions to homelessness. And I also think that City College has been an institution that has served many generations of San Franciscans, myself included, and my husband included also, that have gone on to live very vibrant, raise healthy families here in San Francisco, and City College gave us that foundation. So for all the students, I think, for the San Francisco Unified School District that depend so heavily on City College, that I agree with Supervisor Kim that City College should be free, and this should be something that we see as an extension of public education, that we feel that education is a human right, and that Getting to a 12th grade diploma is not enough to be competitive in this world, and a 2-year college, a free 2-year college education actually is part of the promise of public education as the great equalizer of our society. So thank you, Supervisor Kim, for bringing this forward, and I am in full support.
Thank you, Supervisor Fewer. Supervisor Ronan.
Thank you. I, too, Supervisor Kim, am in support of this budget supplemental, and I would like to say that what strikes me most about it is during a time when there is legislation after legislation at the federal government moving us backwards. This is one piece of legislation that we have before us right here in San Francisco that we have the power to move forward and to make the more equitable society that we want to see. It's inspirational. It's the type of legislation that will make a difference in people's lives, but will also inspire them at a time where we all deeply need inspiration. There are 2 weeks left, is my understanding, whereas if the mayor spends the money immediately, we could make City College free for the next semester. I really urge the mayor to spend this money that we're going to approve today and to provide that hope to the residents of San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Ronan. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, I agree with this policy, but I am not going to vote in favor of it because I don't agree with the way that it's being brought forward. The reality is today, despite all the comments which I fully support today from my colleagues, we are stripping the current fiscal year's homeless budget in order to pay for this. And to me, it's simply a matter of priorities. Our homeless situation smacks us in the face every single day in San Francisco. And to me, as we think about midterm budget cycle right now, it is the wrong decision for our city to strip our homeless budget in order to fund this proposal.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. With that, seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Nope.
Farrell, no. Supervisor Fewer?
Yes.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan? Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai? Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy? Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee? Yee, aye. There are 10 ayes and 1 no, with Supervisor Farrell in the dissent.
The ordinance is finally passed. Madam Clerk. Thank you, audience members. And congratulations, Supervisor Kim. Thank you for your leadership. With that, Madam Clerk, please call item number 2.
Item 2 is an ordinance to authorize the Department of Elections to enter into the Fourth Amendment to an agreement with Dominion Voting Systems, Inc. to extend the term of the agreement through December 31st, 2018, and increase the total not to exceed amount from $19.69 million to approximately $21.9 million.
Roll call vote.
On item 2, Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell, aye. Supervisor Fewer?
Yes.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan? Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai? Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy? Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item.
Item 3 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to modify the fines and fees of the public library.
Okay, colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item.
Item 4 is an ordinance to amend the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code to require members of city boards and commissions to file behested payment reports regarding the solicitation of charitable contributions.
Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item.
Item 5 is an ordinance to amend the Planning Code to add sections 249.15 to create the Mission and 9th Street Special Use District and to amend zoning map sheet HT07 to change the height limit and to affirm the Planning Department's determination and make the appropriate findings.
Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item.
Item 6 is an ordinance to amend the planning code to create an alternative for project sponsors of smaller market rate projects, to direct the affordable housing fee to small sites projects, to affirm the planning department's CEQA determination, and make the appropriate findings.
Supervisor Fuhrer.
Thank you, Madam President. As Supervisor Zamar was a sponsor of this, I would like to speak about the Richmond District, in particular about the small site acquisitions. And the Richmond District suffers from one of the worst no-fault eviction rates in the city. We need additional resources to preserve our affordable housing and keep our existing tenants in place. With the new Housing Rights Committee Richmond District Office, we now also have the ability to very early on identify buildings that are in danger of being emptied out. Saving affordable housing and building our land trust portfolio is one of my highest priorities. So I strongly support this legislation and look forward to developing additional legislative solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fuhrer. Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 7 is an ordinance to direct the Recreation and Park Department to install a memorial in honor of Alex Nieto in Bernal Heights Park, waiving permit and inspection fees and directing other official acts, and to affirm the Planning Department's CEQA determination.
Roll call vote.
On item 7, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. No. Farrell, no. Supervisor Fewer.
Yes.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan.
Aye.
Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 10 ayes and 1 no, with Supervisor Farrell in the dissent.
The ordinance is finally passed. Next item, please.
Item 8 is an ordinance to amend the Environment Code to modify restrictions on the sale or distribution on city property of drinking water, to educate city departments regarding these restrictions, and to make environmental findings.
Madam Clerk, please add me as a co-sponsor,
Thank you, Madam President.
and please call the roll.
On item 8, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Fewer.
Yes.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan.
Aye.
Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The ordinance finally passes unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 9 is an ordinance to amend various codes: the administrative, campaign, and governmental conduct, the environment, health, municipal elections, police, and public works codes, to make non-substantive changes.
Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Next item.
Item 10 is an ordinance to amend ordinance number 1061, entitled Regulating the Width of Sidewalks, to reduce the official sidewalk width along a portion of the easterly side of 30th Avenue between Clement Street to the north and Geary Boulevard to the south, to adopt the Planning Department's CEQA determinations and make the appropriate findings.
Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Next item.
Item 11 is an ordinance to amend the planning code to permit terrace infill on a non-complying structure that is designated as a significant building under Planning Code Article 11 and located on Assessor's Block number 0316, to affirm the Planning Department's CEQA determination and to make the appropriate findings.
Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. All right, let's skip over our 3 p.m. Special orders. Madam Clerk, please go to committee reports.
Item 22 was considered by the Land Use and Transportation Committee at a rescheduled meeting on Monday, January 9th, and was forwarded as a committee report. Item 22 is an ordinance to amend the transportation and urban design elements of the general plan to implement the city's Vision Zero policy regarding pedestrian safety and making the appropriate findings and affirming the Planning Department's CEQA determination.
Supervisor Peskin.
Item 22. Item 23, rather.
Okay.
22, rather. So,
We're on item number 22.
okay. Sorry, there were two. Fine. So yesterday we heard this item at the Land Use Committee and sent it to the full board. The timing on this is a little tough because, as you know, general plan amendments are deemed to become law if the board does not act within 90 days, and this would actually, we're running up against the 90 days, given that there's no board meeting next week. The second reading would be on the 25th. There are some provisions in here that cause concerns for my constituents. Obviously, the high-level language of the Vision Zero element to the general plan make abundant sense, but insofar as it really only called out the requirement to develop streetscape and public realm plans in one residential neighborhood, which is Chinatown, and not for any other residential neighborhood, that caused some concerns from constituents who were not, or who claimed that they were not consulted by the planning department. Organizations like Chinatown Trip that has been around for decades. So, and I think what they were interested in is some assurance from the planning department that they would be engaged in meaningful public participation and that it would be done collaboratively. Unfortunately, because of the way general plan amendments work, we could not put language like that in. I was hoping that somebody from the planning department would be here to address this, and there is. Excellent. The uneasy conclusion that we came to yesterday, because our options are pretty limited, which is, insofar as we can't amend, we can either vote it down and have them put in the language that the community is looking for, or the uneasy piece that we came to yesterday was that the planning department seemed to indicate that they might be willing to come along with some trailing legislation that would address the community's needs. So maybe we can hear from planning as to what you guys are thinking about that.
Okay. We have someone here from Planning Department. Please identify yourself.
Lily Langlois. I'm with the Planning Department, and I think we're happy to work with your office to develop the language that you think would be sufficient for this policy. I'll just clarify that the policy is really saying that for areas where we have high concentrations of pedestrians, that we want to work to develop streetscape plans. And I think it's implied that we would do that as part of a community planning process similar to other projects that we've been doing throughout the city.
Supervisor Paskin?
My office will endeavor to work with the planning department and the affected stakeholders to achieve that language.
Okay. Supervisor Yee?
Yes, I guess I'm a little hesitant to vote for it at this point. The general language for Division Zero seems fine, but when I went through it quickly, I realized that it seems to be missing some pieces for me. Of course, we want to support improving those high incidence corridors as much as possible. But what I'm finding fault with that logic is that for you go into an intersection where there's 1,000 people crossing and 2 people might be involved with collisions as they're crossing. And then I have streets in my district, and I think other supervisors have similar situations where in an intersection where I've seen 2 people, 1 killed and 1 badly injured, for a street corner in which maybe 5 people cross a day, and when you look at it, you might say, oh, that's not a high injury intersection or a corridor. But when you look at it from a different point of view, which is not just purely numbers, but looking at percentage of people that actually use those intersections, it becomes a very different perspective. And I'm beginning to have discussions with TA and MTA staff around that thinking. And what this document doesn't do is reflect that type of thinking. And I feel like if we let it go today, it's going to continue to only focus on the one way of thinking. And that, it makes me very uncomfortable, especially for my district. So I don't know, you have a response for that?
Sure. I can just say that the general plan the intent is to provide sort of broad policy language for different topics. And so this is the transportation element. And there's a number of other documents and policies that the MTA uses and follows in the implementation of a lot of their engineering measures and things like that. So I think the reason that we're proposing to update the general plan is because there was previously no language around Vision Zero. And when we review development applications, we always reference the general plan, and so it's important that it acknowledges Vision Zero. The city's doing tremendous work around that policy, and so I think that this ordinance isn't going to address everything related to Vision Zero, everything related to the high injury corridors. It's really supposed to reference sort of the broader policies that the city has, and then there's other documents and programs that the city can use to help implement those ideas.
As much as it's broad in thinking, it's still, to me, it's broad and narrow at the same time, because one could then take this document and say, well, this is the broad thinking, and we don't have to focus on these other neighborhoods. So it seems like we need to add some language on there. That's one piece. The other piece is MTA has adopted having a lens on equity, and and that should be included also in the Vision Zero piece of it, and there's no mention of that at all. Is there any reason why we don't have that?
So I think under Objective 18, there's a new policy around achieving street safety for all, and so I think that's really trying to address the inclusiveness and sort of achieving equity in terms of how we deliver and design our streets.
And then in regards to the timing of this, what would happen if you have to bring it back to, if we voted down, and for you to come back with including the language I just pointed out?
So if it's voted down, then it goes back to the Planning Commission, and then it'll come back to the board.
I mean, what does that have? What impact does it have?
It's just a timing, just a delay. I think we've been working on this for quite a long time. This was really a proactive thing that the Planning Department and the MTA took on. Other cities around the country have adopted Vision Zeros, and Planning Department hasn't really been that involved. And so I think the Planning Department thought it was appropriate to look at our general plan and make sure that it addresses this larger city policy. It's really just a timing question. The other thing that I'll note is that the Planning Department is updating our transportation element. That's a longer process, but the idea there is to really re-envision sort of how the entire transportation element looks at transportation, looks at community engagement, everything.
Thank you. And as a chair of the Vision Zero committee on the TA board, I really do appreciate that this is being proactive. I just wish maybe we had sat down with my office just so we could have had this discussion earlier.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much to the planning staff for their work on this. One of the things that I wanted to point out was policy 23.10, which starts on the bottom, page 7. It states that we would maintain a presumption against the use of actuated pedestrian signals. And I know that this is supposed to be a very broad document and very general in nature, but one of the things that I do have concerns about is the fact that there are some major arteries running through some of our districts. For example, for mine, it would be 19th Avenue or Sunset Boulevard or Great Highway. And we actually do want to have cars flowing smoothly along those corridors. And we do have actuated pedestrian signals that do help pedestrians, but also, again, when there aren't pedestrians, allow for that free-flowing traffic. And I think that's really important because otherwise we will have cars going all over to our local streets if causing other issues there. So I think that if if for some reason the direction of the board is to make any sort of amendments to this policy, I would say that this one, I don't know if there's a way to amend it so that there isn't just a general presumption against the use of the actuated pedestrian signals.
And did you need clarity on that, Supervisor Tang? Because it's my understanding just that, unfortunately, and this has been a frustration, I think, of many members of this body, is that we can't necessarily make any amendments to this plan on this level. And there have been some back and forth conversations with our staff, well, with my staff in particular, about certain concerns. And I do believe that if the board has serious concerns, I mean, we know this is a general plan, but these are some legitimate concerns with the work that we're trying to accomplish in terms of getting to zero and making things a lot more safe for pedestrians. And I think that if there's some real concerns, we should really consider whether or not we want to move this general plan out of this body and make sure that the appropriate amendments are made to our satisfaction, because ultimately, you know, we have to deal you know, with the impacts on our districts because of our own experiences with what we know happens on the ground level. So just wanted to know if you were interested in getting any additional clarity as it relates to your concerns.
Sure. So perhaps if planning department staff could talk about how we would work with MTA when we do install some of these traffic signals, that perhaps there are considerations that they make to decide whether to use actuated pedestrian signals or not. This policy as written would still give MTA traffic engineers the leeway, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea is that around the goal of Vision Zero is that we're trying to sort of make streets safer for everyone. And so in many cases with actuated pedestrian signals, you're sort of sending a signal that the pedestrians don't have priority. So I think the idea is that we're just trying to sort of emphasize around the notion of achieving street safety. MTA has standards in place for when they require certain engineering treatments, and they're not here right now to speak to those specifically, but I'm happy to follow up with you in your office and provide that in writing.
Thank you very much, because I think my point is just that I want us to make sure we are taking it case by case. There are certain arteries in our districts that require certain things and maybe others that don't, so I just want to make sure that this blanket statement doesn't impact that.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I did scan through the general plan amendments, and I was looking to see if you included the new review protocols for projects that include pedestrian safety review within this general plan amendment.
That's not referenced here specifically, but that procedure is now in place at the Planning Department, and that was the update of the general plan as well as our review of street design projects were two implementation actions that came from the Planning Commission in response to the Vision Zero policy.
So, you know, I know Supervisor Peskin and I represent the two districts that have the highest rate of pedestrian vehicular collisions, and Supervisor Yee chairs our Vision Zero committee, and I'm a little surprised that the Planning Department didn't come and brief any of our offices on these general plan amendments before coming to the full board. And just seeing the number of questions that different supervisors have, and knowing that you ultimately need to get support of members of this board to pass this, I just don't feel comfortable supporting this today. I'm curious as to why the Planning Department didn't approach us, knowing that for a number of our offices, this is one of our major policy priorities. And I understand that this is a general plan amendment, that there isn't necessarily specificity that's outlined here, but I think if we're going to pass something here at the board, we should pass something that has all of our input, especially on an issue that this board has talked greatly about. You know, one of my concerns around the review policy that we actually spent years working with the Planning Department on, particularly around the 340 Bryan project, where we knew that we were putting in an office space on an intersection where there was a great potential for pedestrian vehicular collisions. To not include that in the general plan amendment, I think, is a big gap. We are increasing development, particularly in the districts that I represent, along with the Southeast Corridor. I would like to see some greater enumeration in terms of how the Planning Department is going to approach that consistently. so that we're not doing ad hoc planning, which is in some ways what we're doing right now around Vision Zero with each individual development, at least in the district that I represent. And so I would feel much more comfortable bringing this back to the planning department, having your staff actually come and brief all of our offices on this issue, getting our feedback, and then bringing this back to the Board of Supervisors. So I will not be supporting this today.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. And can I get clarity on whether or not, I just want to make sure from our Deputy City Attorney, Mr. Gibner, if we don't act on this within a certain time period, it's my understanding that it will go into effect. And so in terms of our ability to have input, I'm not 100% certain that we would be able to address some of the issues that Supervisor Kim, myself, Supervisor Tang are mentioning here, and Supervisor Yee are mentioning today.
Yes, Deputy City Attorney John Gibner, you're right. The board, as Supervisor Peskin said at the outset, has no power to amend the general plan. The general plan amendments are initiated with the Planning Commission. They come to the board for an up or down vote. The board has to vote up or down within 90 days of receiving the proposed general plan amendment. My understanding here is that that 90-day period will expire on January 25th, the day after your next board meeting. So really, you have two options. One is to vote it down today by 6 no votes, in which case the Planning Commission could come back with a new proposed general plan amendment reflecting some of your concerns, which you could then vote up or down on. The other option is to pass it on first reading today, to give yourselves a couple weeks to talk with the planning department staff about potential commitments for future general plan amendment, and then decide on the 24th whether you want to pass it on second read or just kill it then by voting it down. That would have the effect of being more or less like a 2-week continuance, giving yourselves a little more time to talk over the issues, but I don't know whether that actually would solve any of the concerns.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Safai. Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Kim, were you done?
I was also going to actually just clarify on that point. In turning this down today, the planning department could simply come back to this Board of Supervisors after actually getting feedback from us on the general plan amendments.
Okay, thanks. Supervisor Safai?
Sorry about that. Just wanted to add to some of the comments that were made. I know that there's been, in our district, there's been some pedestrian fatalities. There's been a lot of conversation about the Mission Geneva and the Alemany, San Jose, and Brotherhood Way corridor. These are significant areas of our district where pedestrian safety is very important. And to have the time to be able to weigh in on this and shape it in a positive manner, along with echoing what some of the things that Supervisor Yee and Peskin have said with regard to certain neighborhoods being singled out without significant input, I am not comfortable voting for this today and will be voting against it.
Thank you. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President. Despite Chair Cohen and my attempts to try to accommodate the department, I think I'm reversing myself from yesterday's vote to send it to the full board with recommendation. Number one, insofar as this is a high-level admonition in the general plan, there's no real time constraint for us, and we can get it done right. But I also think it's a larger issue between two institutions, the lawmaking body, the Board of Supervisors, and the Planning Commission and the Planning Department, which really has to be, I think, more iterative. And I too, actually, yesterday, actually over the weekend when I read the document, was a little taken aback that there had been no, and I say this as a member of the Land Use Committee, that there had been no affirmative outreach by the department early on in the process when it was initiated or even when it was transmitted to the board. I mean, the department comes in all the time on specific projects, but insofar as this is a very hot-button, important public policy issue, and there are concerns not only that were expressed by me, by organizations that represent transportation interests in Chinatown, I think that we should send a message to the Commission and to staff that we can improve this process as it relates to all general plan amendments, and that we take that seriously. So I will be joining those of you in voting no, and look forward to working in good faith with staff to iron out these details. The fundamental thrust of what is being proposed, I think we're all in agreement with, but fine-tuning it and having that sense that we're having a collaborative relationship between the two bodies is, I think, important enough to send a message that we would vote it down today.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Yee.
So, given the fact that there's some questions about this document, and yes, maybe we could do cleanup legislation or trailing legislation. My preference is that let's get it right the first time around, so we don't have to worry about it. And given the fact that this is not time sensitive, and again, I really do appreciate that the Planning Commission has brought this up to want to include Vision Zero into the general plans. I still would prefer to today, and I won't be supporting this, knowing that we could have a much better document that we could all support in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Seeing no other names on the roster, on the item before us, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Item 22, Supervisor Breed.
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Cohen. Yes. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, no. Supervisor Fewer.
No.
Fewer, no. Supervisor Kim.
No?
Kim, no. Supervisor Peskin.
No.
Peskin, no. Supervisor Ronan.
No.
Ronan, no. Supervisor Safai.
No.
Safai, no. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, no. Supervisor Tang.
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Yee.
No.
Yee, no. There is 1 aye and 10 noes, with Supervisors Breed, Farrell, Fewer, Kim, Peskin, Ronan, Safai, Sheehy, Tang, and Yee in the dissent.
The item fails. Madam Clerk, let's go to roll call for introductions.
First to introduce new business, Madam President, is you.
Thank you. Submit.
Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Happy New Year, everyone. Colleagues, I have a couple items that I want to share with you. First, for roll call for introductions, I'm making a hearing request on the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan Monitoring Report. The ordinances that enacted the Eastern Neighborhoods area plans, which were approved by the Board of Supervisors, require that the Planning Department produce a 5-year report monitoring residential and commercial developments in the Eastern Neighborhood, in those neighborhoods, as well as impact fees generated and public and private investment in community benefits and infrastructure. The report tracks all development activity that has occurred in the planned area between 2011 and 2015, and the pipeline as of December 31st, 2015. So, as I have discussed previously here at the Board of Supervisors, and my main focus is for the Potrero Hill and the Central Waterfront portions of the Eastern Neighborhoods. I also understand that the Eastern Neighborhood CAC has issued a formal response to the report, and I'd like us to use this hearing as an opportunity to hear from the CAC about their progress, their feedback, and the plan on the report. The next item is a roll call for introduction. I'm introducing a resolution urging the City and County of San Francisco to join the Step Up initiative, which has a very simple goal. It's to reduce the number of people with mental illness in our county jail. Mental illness is an issue that touches everyone. Our most cherished loved ones have mental health conditions that present early or late in life. Patients seeking mental health services intersect across multiple systems of care, which specifically includes and manifests itself in our city in the form of homelessness, hospitals, and the criminal justice system. Just by way of anecdote, my mother is a clinical child therapist, and so growing up, I've been conditioned to be very sensitive to the mental health state of our citizens here in San Francisco. And in San Francisco, approximately 10% of the Department of Public Health's 25,000 behavioral health system clients had a health contact in the jail this past fiscal year. So 20% of those clients report having some history of criminal justice contact. And between 7 and 14% of our jail population, which is approximately 13,544 in the year of 2015, of this population, many of them have serious mental health issues. This includes schizophrenia, it includes bipolar disorder, and includes manic depression. San Francisco is also known for the generosity of our social services. This has led other cities and states to send their citizens with mental health illnesses one-way tickets to our beloved San Francisco. Now, we all know that this is not a sustainable condition, and we cannot afford to be the safety net for the entire state, let alone the country. Especially if our system of care is not as effective as it could be. So, what are we going to do? As we've discussed in past, we cannot solely focus on identifying funding to build more jails. It should be our goal to give people the humane and appropriate treatment for their conditions. Jails are simply not sustainable and not a suitable place to treat people with mental illness. Not only are they unproven to improve the health of individuals with mental illness, they also it's also a cost-efficient expense on taxpayers that does not necessarily improve public safety. So we can't simply lock people up and think that their condition will improve. We need compassionate, we need appropriate care to accurately address and mitigate these very serious illnesses that they are experiencing that ultimately can lead to crime. Rather than exacerbating their trauma, we should be helping them. So over 300 counties have already passed resolutions similar to the one that I'm introducing today. I would also like to explore traveling possibly to Miami-Dade County to get a better understanding of the specific ways this program is actually unrolling out and on the ground. And how it's working and how the county is able to significantly reduce their incarcerated population. I hope that you'll join me today at the next Board of Supervisors meeting in approving this resolution. I want to take a moment and I want to thank President Breed. I want to thank Supervisor Kim, Sheehy, Feuer, Yee, Farrell, and Safai for their co-sponsorship, I think, on this absolutely critical measure. Finally, I have a brief in memoriam that I'd like to introduce. Mr. Todd Lewis passed away on December 31st. He was born and raised in Richmond, California, and he spent 3 years at San Francisco State University before he tried out as a walk-on for the San Francisco 49ers. Though he never signed with the team, he had a bright future ahead of him. He became an independent consultant for several years, involved in marketing companies all across the United States, helping them create and distribute networks in the United States as well as in Canada. These are European companies. During that time, his mother would constantly recruit him for the electrical business, and eventually she changed his mind. He joined Omega Pacific Electrical Supply, where he served as CEO before he passed away. And during his tenure, he drastically changed the people's attitudes on the importance of energy-efficient lighting and the disposal of hazardous waste. Now, throughout the Bay Area, Mr. Lewis's lights are shining bright. And quite frankly, you may not know this, but some of his projects are alive today. The light installation that we see around City Hall when the Warriors are winning and when the Niners used to win. I'm just checking to make sure you're paying attention. Okay. Well, he was the person responsible for that light installation. He also was responsible for not only City Hall, but also the United Nations Plaza, the San Francisco International Airport, Moscone Center West, SF Muni 3rd Street Light Rail, Richmond Parkway, and the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. Mr. Lewis always strived to produce the best and most energy-efficient products for his customers. And during his time with Omega Pacific, the company was recognized by the Minority Business Development Agency of the United States Department of Commerce as the first minority green firm of the year, the California Department of General Services for outstanding achievement. In closing, I just want to recognize Mr. Lewis. He was a dear friend and a partner and a pillar of this community. He will be sorely missed. I'm certain that his legacy will on. He's been a champion for small businesses and minority contractors in this city as well as across the entire state of California. And with that, I'd like to ask that we close the entire board meeting out in his memory. Madam President.
Thank you. And colleagues, can we close the meeting out for Mr. Lewis on behalf of the entire board without objection? Without objection, we will close out the meeting on behalf of the entire board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. And at 3 p.m., we will cut away to the special orders. Until then, Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I have one hearing request. For 2 consecutive nights in December, a strange rotten egg smell lingered here in the air of San Francisco, and it had nothing to do with politics in our city. I had heard from many residents rightfully concerned about the anxious cause of this smell, and we've been left with questions for weeks. Recent media reports from KQED and investigations from the Bay Area Quality Management District officials have shown that abnormally high amounts of hydrogen sulfide from Chevron's Richmond refinery caused the sulfur-like smell in San Francisco. And to add insult into injury, investigations show that Chevron delayed for more than 13 hours before reporting the first flaring incident to Air District officials. These Air District officials are planning to levy fines against Chevron for the extreme delay in notifying officials. And Chevron has yet to take responsibility, but the evidence from air monitoring data, equipment, and independent officials points to the refinery. We have air quality laws on the books for a reason. They're meant to keep our community safe from toxic gases, and Chevron has to answer for these questions. So today I'm calling for a hearing to get straight answers from Chevron and the Air District officials on the flaring. The public deserves to know why they occurred in the first place, why there was a delay in reporting the flares, what procedures are in place to protect against flaring and toxic gases from getting into our air in the future, and what the implications could be for our residents. I plan to host this hearing in the coming weeks, and we'll be asking Chevron and Air District officials to report for the hearing. I look forward to providing a sense of assurance to our residents that something is being done to make sure these toxic gas leaks never happen again in our air in San Francisco. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Fewer.
Yes, thank you. We spoke yesterday about a woman's majority on the Board of Supervisors for the first time in 20 years. With an incoming administration and the need to protect the rights of women and other vulnerable populations, I am proud to be joining the Women's March on January 21st, along with a contingent of women and allies from District 1 and also my 2 adult daughters. I invite my colleagues to join us as well. So for people that don't know about the Women's March, this is a little something from this website. The Women's March is a national movement to unify and empower everyone who stands for human rights, civil liberties, and social justice for all. We gather in community to find healing and strength through tolerance, civility, and compassion. We welcome all people to join us as we unite locally and nationally. So please join us January 21st, 2017. 3 to 5 p.m., there'll be a rally with speakers, arts and music at Civic Center in San Francisco. And then at 5 p.m., we will have a candlelight march down Market Street to Justin Herman Plaza. So if you're interested in joining me and my contingent, my friends and family, please follow up with my office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Fewer. Madam President, it is now just after 3 p.m.
Okay, we will return to roll call at a later time, but at this time we will turn to our 3 p.m. special orders. Today we have 3, and we will start with the first 3 p.m. special order. Madam Clerk, please call items 12 through 15.
Items 12 through 15 comprise the public hearing that have been continued open from December 13th, 2016. for persons interested in the proposed project located at 2675 Folsom Street to allow the demolition of 3 two-story warehouse and storage structures and construction of a 4-story, 40-foot tall residential building, and the determination of exemption from environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, known as CEQA, approved by the Planning Commission on September 26, 2016, and issued as a community plan exemption by the Planning Department on the 27th of June and September 22nd, 2016. Items 13, 14, and 15 are the motions associated with that public hearing.
Okay, Supervisor Ronan?
Yes, colleagues, you may recall that late last year, the Board of Supervisors directed the Planning Department to analyze the potential socioeconomic impacts on the environment of a project at 1515 South Van Ness, which is very close to the project on appeal today. I have been working with both the project sponsors and the appellants who are in agreement to continue this item to the March 21st, 2017 board meeting. At that point, we expect that planning will have a deeper analysis looking at the impacts not only on the 1515 South Van Ness project, but also on the project at 2675 Folsom Street. So I will be making the motion to continue items 13 through 15 to the March 21st, 2017 board meeting.
Madam President, that's items 12 through 15.
Okay. Supervisor Ronan has made a motion to continue items 12 through 15 to the meeting of March 21st, 2017, and was seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Is there any public comment on the continuance? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. All right. On the motion to continue the items 12 through 15 to the meeting of March 21st, 2017. Supervisor Ronan, did you have any further comments?
I would just note that the appellates withdrew their conditional use appeal.
And we're going to get to that one next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. Okay, can we take the continuance without objection? Without objection, the items 12 through 15 will be continued to the meeting of March 21st, 2017. All right, Madam Clerk, please call items 16 through 19.
Items 16 through 19 have also been continued open from December 13th for a public hearing of persons interested in the certification of a conditional use authorization for a proposed project at 2675 Folsom Street, issued by the Planning Commission, dated September 22nd, 2016. Items 17, 18, and 19 are the motions associated with that public hearing.
Supervisor Ronan?
Yes, the appellates have withdrawn their conditional use appeal, so I make a motion to adopt item 17 and table items 18 and 19.
Okay, Supervisor Ronan has made a motion, seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Is there any public comment on the items? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, the motion passes unanimously. All right, Madam Clerk, let's go to our next 3 p.m. special order.
Items 20 and 21 have, pursuant to a resolution number 525-16, adopted on December 13th, 2016, the Board will convene a committee of the whole for a public hearing to consider the subject matter of item 21, the proposed ordinance which orders the conditional vacation of certain San Francisco Public Utilities Commission public service easements that exist within subphases 1A and 1B of the Park Merced Development Project area located in the Lake Merced District.
Okay, Supervisor Yee?
So I'll just keep this real simple. This is part of the development plan that was passed in 2011, I believe. So I just ask my colleagues to, for their support of this item.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Yee. All right, this hearing is now open, and let's see, 1 second. Okay, colleagues, we are sitting as a committee of the whole to discuss the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission Public Service Easement Vacation Order for the Park Merced Development Project, and we will open this hearing at this time. And colleagues, are there any more questions? Okay, are there any members of the public who'd like to comment on this hearing at this time? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Seeing no other speakers or any members of the public who would like to comment, this hearing has been held and is now filed, and we will now reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. All right, let's go to the item. Seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On item 21, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Fewer.
Yes.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai.
Aye.
Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, this ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, let's return to roll call for introductions.
Next up to introduce new business is Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Because I didn't speak yesterday, I did not get an opportunity to welcome our newest members to the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Fewer, Safai, Ronan, and Sheehy. I'm really excited to work with you, and it is really exciting to see new faces on this board. So thank you for running. Thank you for serving. This is a great job, and I believe that we will do great work on behalf of our city and county together. Colleagues, today I am asking or requesting our budget and legislative analysts to examine our planning department's enforcement action history and penalty schemes since 2000. I have often joked that one of the things that I've learned on the Board of Supervisors is that if I was a property owner and I did not understand the zoning or uses of my building, that I would not bother to look it up because there's so little enforcement of our planning code that we actually spend a lot of time crafting, negotiating, and putting together. While there are egregious actors like the Academy of Arts, which grabs many headlines, we often see smaller actors defy planning zoning, not asking the city for permission, but asking for forgiveness later. In fact, this has often been how we have lost much of our PDR and art spaces to office and other more profitable uses here in San Francisco. Enforcement has also been a point of debate in many of our land use-oriented ordinances, ranging from legalization of in-law units to short-term rentals, as this board has questioned the ability of our planning department to actually enforce new regulations on land use. And the planning department has freely admitted that it often does not have the resources to enforce much of our laws. In a recent land use hearing last month, I learned that despite the fact that one of our property owners has been violating the restrictions of their SUD and POPO obligation since 2008, that planning has not taken any action on enforcement and was also not aware if there was even a penalty scheme if they had finally determined a violation. When it takes 8 years to examine a violation of our laws, I'm not even upset at our property owners. I look at our planning department. So I'm asking our BLA to come up with a report on what enforcement actions this department has actually taken over the last 16 years, and also to look at the penalty schemes that are in place. I look forward to the future discussions, and we'll be calling for a hearing once the report is completed. And finally, I just want to acknowledge Supervisor Cohen on the introduction of her resolution. I do believe mental health is one of the biggest issues that I hope that we can tackle and confront as a Board of Supervisors. It is something that we see in our streets, that we see in our prisons, that we see in our homeless shelter population, and it is one that we absolutely need to look at resources for and best practices and see how we can better address this issue, and also to better acknowledge the dignity of so many individuals who are suffering. Thank you very much, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I'm introducing a hearing at the Government Audit and Oversight Committee with regard to the recent and frankly abysmal findings of the TRIP Road Report, which was released in November. Of the 25 urban areas in our country with a population of 500,000 or more, San Francisco and Oakland jointly rank number one in poor road conditions. We top that chart with a whopping 71% of our public roadways listed in poor condition. What does that mean? Virtually everyone in the city has been on the receiving end of a rough ride, whether you're a driver or a cyclist. And as a member of the Government Audit Committee, we know exactly how many lawsuits we have to settle because of that. I know that every one of our offices receives frustrated calls about gaping potholes and the patchwork of constant road repairs that result from consecutive road construction projects. It's not the sexiest topic, but it truly impacts our residents' everyday lives, and I'm committed to working with Public Works and the PUC, Planning, and the MTA to analyze the findings of the TRIP report and see what strategies we can pursue. Obviously, we have done general obligation bonds in the past, but perhaps we should revisit discussions around a vehicle license fee to ultimately ensure that our road repaving and capital improvement plans are on track to get us off this list. In addition, I'm looking forward to your support on legislation that my office has been working on. Thank you to my legislative aide, Lee Hepner, to ensure that our Department of Building Inspection has a clear and consistent set of best practices regarding the retention of critical permit and safety documents. During the course of the 3 hearings we've held on seismic safety, with special emphasis, of course, on 301 Mission Street, commonly known as the Millennium Tower, it quickly became apparent that DBI needed an update to its records retention policy. It's not acceptable that critical documents were either destroyed, lost, or randomly archived on such a large-scale project, particularly given its significance as one of the first high-rises to require a full peer review. The public has a right to know the facts and circumstances surrounding the city's approval of seismically vulnerable projects, as well as the extent of our city's safety review processes. Finally, colleagues, I'd like to adjourn today's meeting in the memory of my dear friend, the one and only Mary Beth Marks. I had the honor of officiating her marriage ceremony to her wife, Flora Gaspar, at their beautiful and attended their beautiful reception afterwards at their Venetian-inspired North Beach restaurant called De Flora. For the past 20 years, Mary Beth, or MB as she was known by her friends, and Flora presided over their family restaurant, which they started with no budget, no backers, and no real experience. It quickly became a cornerstone of the North Beach neighborhood, with MB baking up homemade bread, pear tarts, and delectable pastries, and Flora selling her trademark sweet Hungarian paprika. So it's a terrible loss. My condolences to her family, Flora Gaspar, and her brother, Patrick Marks, and his husband. The rest I will submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Ronan.
Colleagues, I could not be more excited that the first piece of legislation that I'm introducing today is the Calle 24 Special Use District. It is a long time coming, and I just want to recognize members of the Calle 24 Council that are in the audience, if you can stand up today. Thank you so much for being here. We have been working on this legislation for over 2 years, especially Eric Arguello and I had the pleasure working as a legislative aide to develop this special use district, and really just wanted to start out by thanking Supervisor Campos for starting and championing this work. And I feel very grateful that I get to introduce it as my first legislative act. If the mission is the heart of the Latino community in San Francisco, Calle 24 is definitely the center of that heart. It is a special place where parents drop their daughters off at Mission Girls and MEPI youth programs after school, where Presida Eyes takes people on tours of the incredible murals on Balmy Alley, where friends gather for brunch at St. Francis Fountain, a legacy business, and where artists exhibit their cutting-edge work at the Galeria de la Raza. These are just a very few examples of why the Board of Supervisors in 2014 designated the area surrounding 24th Street, Calle 24, as the Latino Cultural District. This body recognized the significance of the Latino Cultural District to the city's rich history and culture. And while the Latino Cultural District is a special place, it is also an area facing the brunt of the city's affordability crisis. When we talk about affordability, we often think about housing, but small businesses are also being displaced at a rapid pace that is changing the very nature of our neighborhoods. The legislature that Mayor Lee, and I want to thank the mayor and his incredible staff for working with us to develop this legislation. This legislation that we are introducing today is a critical tool in helping preserve the character and vibrancy of San Francisco's Latino Cultural District. For the first time, we are using land use tools to articulate what characteristics we would like to see in new businesses coming into the neighborhood that has been in turmoil because of widespread displacement of longtime residents and businesses. It will help us retain the diverse mix of new businesses along the corridor so that Calle 24 doesn't just become Restaurant Row. Through this legislation, we are laying out the welcome mat for businesses that will do at least meet 4 of the following 6 criteria. 1, offer products and services that are accessible to all residents, including low and middle income people. 2, support local hiring. 3, develop partnerships with new and existing businesses and institutions along the corridor. 4, support local and Latino arts. 5, preserve the unique design characteristics of the corridor. Or 6, preserve legacy businesses. These are 30-plus year businesses that have been officially designated by the city as making significant contributions to San Francisco's communities. The legislation requires businesses to obtain a conditional use authorization, another layer of review by the Planning Commission, in 2 instances. When the business wants to merge storefronts totaling more than 799 square feet, or when replacing what was formerly a legacy business. This legislation also works to maintain the unique mix of businesses along the corridor so that it not only serves as a destination location, but as a neighborhood-serving corridor. The legislation limits new restaurants and bars if they are in a 300-foot diameter in which existing restaurants and bars make up more than 35% of the businesses. I want to give a very, very special thanks to many staff members in the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, who are the mayor's staff that worked to develop this legislation with us, starting with Lisa Pagan and Joaquin Torres. But I want to very specially recognize Diana Ponce de Leon. Yes, see, she's getting a hand. To my new colleagues, what you're going to find working in this incredible city is that in every department there are gems. They're superstars that are brilliant, that care deeply about their work, and that we're so lucky on the Board of Supervisors to get to work with. And in the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, one of those people is Diana Ponce de Leon. Next to Eric Arguello, I think she knows more about this street than anyone in the world, and has just been an amazing advocate and ally to work with. So Diana, if you're watching, thank you so much for your work. I also want to recognize Sheila Chung-Hagan, my former colleague who we helped develop this together as legislative aides, and now who's in my office for seeing this through. She got a hand too, Sheila, in case you didn't hear that. And then to the Calle 24 Council, thank you for fighting so hard to prevent displacement of the beautiful community on Calle 24 and the Mission. It's going to be very fun to see this legislation implemented after so much thoughtful work being put into it. And what I'll say is that, this is really cutting edge, using land use tools to address displacement of businesses. It might be one of the first times in the country that we're using this tool to make this happen, and so we're developing a model in that sense. And I know, and I just want to recognize Supervisor Jane Kim, who is looking at something similar for both the Tenderloin to support the Comptons district, the LGBT community in the Tenderloin, as well as the Filipino community in Soma. So we are experimenting here in San Francisco, which is something we really like to do, and really expect to have a great impact with this legislation. Thank you so much. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Ronan. Supervisor Safai.
Thank you, colleagues. I want to, as part of my introduction today, keep a promise that we made while we campaigned for office on the issue of child care. So I would like to call for a hearing to evaluate the access to quality, affordable child care in District 11, including the analysis of the number of children age 5 and under living in my district and the available spots for them, both privately operated and city funded. So we've talked to and reached out, and we're going to ask to attend the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, the Office of Early Child Care and Education, First Five San Francisco, and the San Francisco Unified School District to talk, to compile a report and attend this committee. We, as many of you know, or maybe you don't know, our district and District 10 and Supervisor Cohen have the most children under the age of 18. And in many cases, we have the most children under the age of 5. And without access to affordable, quality child care, families leave San Francisco and oftentimes can't go to work. And so I can speak from personal experience. Our child care was displaced from District 11. It relocated into the Mission. We were very fortunate to help find a home for them, and the owners did, and through the Archdiocese. But access to good quality child care and the diversity of child care, in our instance, it's a Spanish immersion program, very unique in that sense. There's not many of them that are affordable in San Francisco. And so language immersion, all different types of child care for working families and families. And so I introduced this today in regards to so many different families that are in need to access affordable child care. And so I welcome and look forward to these departments coming in and providing this information to us so we can craft some policies and ordinances if necessary to help address the shortcomings. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Safai. Supervisor Sheehy.
Colleagues, it's a great honor after years of being an advocate for issues I care so deeply about on the outside to now be in this chamber with the opportunity to introduce legislations that will have a long-term impact citywide on these issues. Today, at my first roll call, I have 3 items to put forward. First and foremost, I'm a district supervisor with a responsibility to the people of District 8. One of the most pressing issues for all San Franciscans right now is neighborhood crime. Car break-ins, burglaries, petty theft, open drug use, and the like. Just in front of my house, there have been car break-ins twice, I think, in the last 3 to 4 months. And there's nothing, our neighbor next door had 2 little kids. Yeah, I have 2 little kids. And it's something when you see literally right in front of your house, kid that you babysat holding on to her mother's pants leg as she shakes broken glass out of a car seat. You know, just down the street from us, we've had somebody in broad daylight robbed with a gun. I was talking to somebody yesterday who had experienced multiple car break-ins and a home burglary. And this is in Noe Valley, not that the neighborhood matters, because I think this is endemic across the city. So there have been several efforts recently to set a neighborhood crime policy, both through the board and ballot measure. We've yet to find a consensus policy. We need a consensus path forward to fight against neighborhood crime that is thoughtful, intentional, but also compassionate. So today I'm calling for a hearing to begin scoping the best neighborhood crime fighting strategy for our city. I understand that this is an issue that Supervisor Yee also cares about, and I would be happy to work with you in this effort, as this is a problem that affects all of us in San Francisco. Also, as I mentioned previously, I've dedicated my life to ensuring access to health care for everyone, most notably for HIV-positive people. The specter of a Trump-led Department of Health and Human Services worries me deeply. The Affordable Care Act is immediately threatened, and the impacts of punitive health care policy will affect us dramatically. So today, I'm introducing a resolution to encourage Congress to maintain the Affordable Care Act in its entirety, to continue to provide health care to the 30 million people it has helped across the nation and locally for the 250,000 people in San Francisco whose lives have been enhanced by having access to health care coverage. Finally, to this end, I'm also calling for a hearing on the federal cuts we expect will come on health care affecting undocumented San Franciscans, LGBTQ, the homeless, and cuts to programs that have benefited other protected classes in our city in the case that the ACA is repealed by a Trump administration. I'm aware that Mayor Lee has already been at the forefront of this issue and reached out to a number of mayors to build a partnership on this issue and has held a number of strategic roundtables with city department heads to ensure that San Francisco residents are taken care of in the face of the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. This hearing will be an opportunity to talk about this work in an open forum. I look forward to working with the mayor, his budget office, and all members of the board to identify the mitigation strategy for these disastrous cuts. Finally, District 8 Supervisor has always supported transgender San Franciscans. I continue that work today with a letter of inquiry to the Sheriff's Department. The treatment of transgender people in the custody of the Sheriff's Department is a subject I've heard much about. Transgender people report that there is more progress the city can make to ensure proper treatment in our city jails. Some will say this subject is complicated, but our values are simple. San Francisco must treat every individual in custody with dignity and respect, regardless of their gender, identity, or sexual orientation. It is crucial for the community to know the status of the Sheriff's Department's work to treat transgender people in custody with the respect they deserve. This letter of inquiry is a first small step, and I look forward to the Sheriff's reply. On all of these items, I would welcome any co-sponsors. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Sheehy. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Today, colleagues, I'm going to be calling a hearing on the performance audit of the senior services in San Francisco, which was published by the Budget and Legislative Analysts in July of 2016. In July of 2015, I actually introduced a motion for the BLA to conduct a performance audit on all senior services in San Francisco. In September of 2015, the Board of Supervisors adopted this motion, and in July of 2016, the BLA published a report evaluating the city's provision of senior services. And in light of the Dignity Fund passing last November, which we set aside a baseline of $38 million, a dedicated funding for over 20 years for increased services and programs for seniors and adults with disabilities, it is timely to call a hearing on the findings and recommendations from this report so the city resources, especially the staffing and budget at the Department of Aging and Adult Services, can be deployed strategically and effectively to reach the seniors who need the services the most. In the BLA performance audit report, it identified 5 findings and 16 recommendations regarding ways to improve the needs assessment to contain a gap analysis, how to make contract awarding more transparent and consistent, how to monitor contracts more consistently, how to improve evaluations of case management providers to ensure consistent quality, and also ways to reduce the wait lists for nutrition program services. The purpose of this hearing request is to ensure that our city resources, including the Dignity Fund, will be used responsibly, wisely, and efficiently to maximize the quality and deliver the services to our seniors. I will call on many agencies that provide senior services, including the Department of Aging and Adult Services, the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, the Department of Public Health, the San Francisco MTA, and also the Recreation and Park Department, to report their services, what kind of services they are actually providing for seniors. I want to thank my colleagues, Malia Cohen, who also sponsored the Dignity Fund, Jeff Sheehy, Asha Shafahi, and Jane Kim for already agreeing to co-sponsor this hearing with me, and I look forward to more of my colleagues joining us in this hearing. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Madam President, that concludes the introduction of new business.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please read public comment.
At this time, the public may now address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board. To include the minutes, public comment is not allowed when an item has previously been subject to public comment at a board committee, such as the case with the new and unfinished business or the committee report item. Pursuant to the board's rules, please direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors and not to the audience. Speakers using interpretation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time, and if you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
Thank you. And sir, you need to stand in line like everyone else, those members. Sorry. Thank you. Mr. Yip, please come forward. Not in front of everyone. You have to get in line like everyone else. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Andrew Yip. The world is full of good hope. We all have good lives, but with certain imperfection. Our world rescue for our people. We must firstly make rescue of human hearts. That will require each of us to engage onto personal cultivation in achieving of working results, in manifesting the words of the true principles onto the universe of heaven and below. Political leaders with good virtues should not rise onto the stage of World Peace Platform to promote peace of wellness in extension to 4 Cs by great teachings of true principle in making peace resolution for ending of social disorder and worldly tragedy. With having the virtues of loyalty, parental love, dignity, and justice for civil uprightness, one can maintain the worldly peace with the glory of mercy in rescue and love in protection for our people. Being close to the people and being joyful with the people, political leaders can anew the people and manage the people with good works of cultivation and missionary pathways. These are the goals and values for civil services and worthy management to bring worthy human degrading downfall back to the integrity of holy way and holy virtues for the unified oneness of the universe, of passion, of wisdom, of destiny. God bless holy mission. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Herbert Weiner, District 1. I'm requesting the board's undivided attention. Thank you. The need for an MTA watchdog. The MTA is out of control with practices as forcing seniors and the disabled to walk a quarter of a mile to the bus stop, with paratransit being an unrealistic and inadequate solution, and deleting traffic lanes and parking spaces, which causes congestion and harm to businesses and consumers of our city. Forcing seniors, the disabled, and seriously ill to walk long distances on the basis of increasing bus speed is an admixture of irrationality and thinly veiled cruelty. It is part and parcel of Muni Forward, which has taken an axe to public transportation at great public expense. For decades, Muni and MTA have never solved the problems of public transportation. Muni Forward is the latest backward example. While the board may state that by city laws it is powerless to redress the abuses of MTA, it is possible to address this matter with Mayor Ed Lee and his administrative assistant, Steve Cava. After all, the mayor ended the practice of paid parking on Sunday. The mayor and his administrative assistants are a check and balance to executive departments as MTA. MTA must be brought to heel by this board.
The sergeant will be there to pick that up in a moment. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Supervisors, I watched the inauguration, your so-called inauguration, and I would like to bring to your attention that this city, the city and county of San Francisco, has its first people, the Mohawk Ohlone. To the newcomers, I encourage you to go to the website so that you'll understand what this means. I represented San Francisco going 1,600 miles to North Dakota to be with the Lakota Sioux Nation. But we have real problems here in San Francisco. And our young Native Americans are ready to come to City Hall. And as we have done before, bring to your attention that you can have all the hearings you want to, but you have to address quality of life issues. It is a shame that in this great city, named after St. Francis of Assisi, we have the homeless dying on our streets. Our children don't get the best benefits. And y'all are bringing it up. But our mayor is fast asleep at the cockpit. So we embrace the gays. We embrace the straights. We embrace the Chinese. We embrace everybody. But it's time for us to embrace the Mohawk Ohlone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Christopher Dahl. I live at 6th and Howard, 10 blocks and less than 40 years from sea level. I rise to comment on vision. Recently, our beloved Harvey Rose and his invaluable organization have delivered to your house a report on the number of pedestrians killed in our beloved city and county by automobile drivers over the past several years. The recent average is 20 vehicular obliterations per year. Mr. Rose noted that a process is in place to reduce this number to zero, the so-called Vision Zero project. I will note that if your vision is at zero, that usually means you're blind. And if that's the goal of this board, then this board is already blind. Now look, Mr. Rose reports that almost 42,000 citations were written by SFPD in 2015 for the 5 most dangerous moving violations, of which about 6,000 were for running a red light. I have demonstrated in previous comment that someone runs the red light on the turn from Fell to 10th Street every light cycle. I will now assert that someone runs the red light at every light cycle at every intersection in Soma during daylight hours, at a minimum. That is to say, 50 intersections times 12 changes per hour for 10 hours a day times 250 working days a year for a murderous total of 1.5 million violations annually, at a minimum, just for Soma, just for work days. That makes the count of 6,000 citations written by SFPD over the whole city and over a whole year feeble to the point of contempt. Apparently, SFPD already has Vision Zero. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed and Board of Supervisors. My name is Kurt, and I'm in District 4. Today, I want to speak in opposition to establishing a public fund in support of legal defense services for aliens in immigration court. I do not object to a fund being established with private money, but I would insist that no public money be used for these purposes simply because it is a violation of the law. I don't want my supervisors to be engaging in illegal activity, and I'm sure they don't want to break the law themselves. Here's a little background. In our federal constitution, we have the Sixth Amendment, which guarantees to each citizen the right to an attorney in any criminal case, any criminal trial, any criminal court procedure. Based on this, we have public defenders who provide these legal defense services free of charge to clients. The jurisdiction of San Francisco is unique and only among a handful of jurisdictions in the nation where the public defender, currently Jeff Adachi, is an elected office. Okay, in civil court, there is no right to an attorney. The defendant must pay for his own attorney. In immigration court, the federal immigration naturalization statute specifically states aliens' rights in proceedings. In proceeding under this section, under regulations of the Attorney General, the alien shall have the privilege of being represented at no expense to the government by counsel of the alien's choosing, who is authorized to practice in such proceeding. So Jeff Adachi, our public defender, is an attorney, and he knows the law, and he knows that this is the way it is, and many supervisors are attorneys, and I'm wondering why we're...
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Just so you know, Mr. Yip said I could go before him. I was listening to Aaron Schroyer and Leon McAdoo today on Infowars.com, and they're talking about how Senator Ted Cruz very ably defended our new Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, in proving that he just basically destroyed the KKK a few years back. So this whole thing where they're trying to paint him into some racist is a total, absolute lie. Okay, in regards to prophecy, as I was meditating on the fact that President-elect was elected on a Sabbath year, and how we're still in the Sabbath year till the new moon in March, by the way, I wondered how many times did this occur in our past history? And it turns out he was the 9th president elected on a Sabbath year. If we're still here by 2044, we will have a president elected on not only a Sabbath year, but the Sabbath year that precedes the Jubilee year. And that's only happened one other time by a guy that didn't do anything of notoriety, so I won't mention his name. But it's interesting that the last time a president was elected on a Sabbath year was with Bush Sr., and previous to that it was with Kennedy. He was elected on a Sabbath year. And it's just epic. I never thought it would end like this, to tell you the truth. It's really exciting. I'm not putting my faith in government. I put my faith in Christ. But, it does say he that rules should consider what God says, rule in the fear of God. We should really think about the fact that we did acknowledge that we are one nation under God. We're one nation under God, and the revelation he's given us is the Bible. It's not the Quran. And so he's going to put his hand on the Bible, not the Quran. So it's quite interesting. Jesus is coming soon. Also in the 2300 days of Daniel chapter 8, it ends on 1776, believe it or not. The reason why most Christians don't understand this is because they go by a bogus chronology that gives us 587 BC as the time when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President Breed and Board of Supervisors. My name is Iris Marians, and that is my aunt sitting over there in the wheelchair. She's over 100 years old and will expect to be homeless this coming week. She has been in a 2-year battle with Peter Owens of Burlington, Vermont, who was the Community and Economic Development Director for another city, while he had an application into your Public Works Department for condo conversion, which stated that she had moved to Texas. The DA's office is looking at this, but they have really not got to it. They haven't come to her home to see that she has not moved to Texas, and Peter Owens and co. have just pulled their application out. However, it's a conflict of interest for him to be a public official, have the public's trust, and be in San Francisco ellising buildings for his own personal gain. Every member in that building of 670 Page, she lives at 670 Page Street. She has not moved. She was hospitalized, however, and because the investigation, your Adult Protective Services Agency, has treated us with dismissal, and I'm saying that kindly, your Director of Aging and Human Services wrote me an email saying that he wasn't at liberty to speak about it. Jennifer Smith, who is with Adult and Protective Agency, who had come over to her home to see the cameras inserted at her front and back door while she was under surveillance for 2 years by the other owners, which is illegal. My aunt paid $100,000 into her life estate. She did not miss a payment. She was not in the arrears. They were able to raise a lawsuit against her because they attached fraudulent documents to her deed of trust. She's a citizen of this city and should be protected by the agencies that are the reporting agencies that look after these issues. Your Adult Protective Services actually contacted the sheriff and told the sheriff that 2 other relatives of hers would take her in if she were evicted.
Thank you,
That's
ma'am.
news to us. I'm sorry, I don't want to go over time, but we are at.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll have someone come over and take a statement from you. Thank you kindly. Next speaker, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robin, and I want to welcome the new people also on the board. So thank you for being here, as well as all the regulars returning. So I decided to come and thank San Francisco for declaring itself a sanctuary city. When I saw that, I thought, I think I need to show up and say thank you for that. We're really proud of that, and we may even have the state of California joining you in declaring a state a sanctuary state. This is so important in our response to the impending Trump regime. As you're aware, our city went into action right after the election. People were in the streets. I went to the Green Festival that weekend, and I went table to table to ask the environmental organizations what was happening, and they said they were getting more donations than they'd ever seen in their life. I know that the Sierra Club got another 12,000 new members out of this. So it's really coming up in donations and memberships. People are ready to fight. Earth Justice, which was the old Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, has 120 attorneys ready to hit the ground January 21st, and they're very well funded, and they're just one of many organizations. The San Francisco Bar organized a lawyers conference last Friday at the Bill Graham Auditorium in 6 weeks. They had 13 panels of 3 attorneys each, plus a keynote speaker. They're ready to go. We've had a lot of street action. Today at the Federal Building, we had a rally in the rain against the Sessions nomination, and I'm aware of dozens of people who have left San Francisco who are in Washington, D.C., and I want to give a shout out to those who were in Washington, D.C. in that session today and probably got arrested. So thank you to San Francisco for its wonderful response. Let's keep it up. Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Welcome to the new supervisors, and hello to the returning ones. I'm Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We are independent of any library and library vendors, so we're not selling anything to folks, and our opinions are independent as well. Our writings have been published in many local newspapers, including San Francisco Chronicle, the Bay Guardian, and many others. We've published in Wired Magazine, the New York Times, in library journals as well, American Libraries, College and Research Libraries News, Public Libraries Magazine, and so on. We will be talking with you as the months go by about a variety of library issues. We're particularly concerned with library privacy for patrons, and currently the library looks like it's planning to install an expensive, dysfunctional, and highly privacy-threatening to patrons technology called RFID, Radio Frequency Identification Technology. About 10 years ago, the Board of Supervisors rejected funding for it 2 years in a row, thanks to the efforts of our group and the American Civil Liberties Union and Electronic Frontier Foundation. So I hope you'll be paying attention to some of the things that we have to say independently about this technology and its inappropriateness for use in any library. There are a number of other issues that we will be talking about with respect to the library. If you have any questions or interest in library matters, we would be very happy to provide you with background. We've been going to Library Commission meetings pretty much without fail for more than 20 years. Best of luck in your efforts for the city of San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
My name's Jack Davis, and I want to say thank you to the people who were, in my mind, somewhat crazy enough to run for elected office. I know a lot about running campaigns and candidates, and I tip my hat to those of you who went out there and put up with all the sacrifices that go with running for elected office, and I say thank you. The second thing that I wanted to comment about is the sanctuary city. I may be an old-timer. I can't believe that I'm 70. I came here to the city when I was a young and kind of cute 25-year-old as part of the gay migration to the city. Harvey Milk was a friend of mine, not to drop names, but he was. And, you know, Sanctuary City, I love the concept. What I can't get is why we protect felons, violent felons who have committed acts of violence repeatedly against fellow human beings, and that we're going to basically pay the price. And I'd like you to have a hearing on how San Franciscans feel about it as a prelude to people like me who would go out and collect signatures to see if that's something that San Franciscans really want to consider as part of a sanctuary city. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Madam President, congratulations on your reelection. Congratulations to the new members. My name is Otto Duffy. I come from the North of Market Planning area, which is the neighborhood off towards Polk Street from here. Basically, I just wanted to get up and talk after Jack Davis. But I would usually I come up here and I complain about something because there's a lot of issues in the North of Market. But today I would actually like to start out by complimenting everyone. I'm not sure why or who. I guess it's term limits more than anything else. Something that went well. That is, sometimes I've been up here more than once in a year to do public comment. I come up here somewhat. And something I've been living in fear of, all of us actually, for about 8 years is David Campos. He had, on several occasions, he would ask follow-up questions to public commenters, and he would just destroy them. He would character destroy them. So I'm glad that, for that reason, I'm glad he's not here right now, and I hope most of you are a little bit softer. I think the thing is I took the progressive side in politics, and I'm beginning to rethink that. I'm thinking that I actually did that just to avoid being questioned by David Campos. So anyway, good luck to all of you.
Are there any other members of the public who are interested in speaking at general public comment? Madam President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and welcome to the chamber, Mr. Davis. Thank you for stopping by. All right, with that, public comment is now closed. Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Madam President, today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following beloved individuals. On behalf of Supervisor Cohen, on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, for the late Mr. Todd Lewis, and on behalf of Supervisor Peskin, for the late Miss Mary Beth Marks.
Okay. Colleagues, this brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any further business before us today?
That concludes our business for today, Madam
Okay,
President.
thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.